So today I want to talk about something that really hasn't been getting the attention that it deserves, and that is the 3DS. So in these weeks after E3 2016 and everyone's talking about all of the great games that were shown, all of the trailers that were really cool, the press conferences that were good and bad, what's Nintendo doing, when are these other games coming out, what about Resident Evil 7 and all these different things. Of course, we're also all wondering when the hell Nintendo is going to finally show us the NX, reveal the price, the release date, the launch games, the other planned games for down the road. Of course, the Breath of the Wild version for the NX. That's all very exciting and stuff we can't wait for. But again, no one's really talking about the 3DS. And I think that it's about time we start paying attention to the 3DS because it could be a great signifier of what Nintendo may be doing going forward. Of course, we know one of the myriad rumors about the NX, and a list of about 10 million different rumors, is the idea that Nintendo is making a console handheld hybrid. I can't count the amount of times that I've said that on a video the last couple of months and the amount of times that even the internet has brought up that exact phrasing about what the NX might be. And when you consider the fact that that actually has come up many times, I do think it's one of the more substantial rumors about the NX because it's come up a couple of times and across pretty big expanses of time. So it's not like it's just been the hot button thing to talk about for like a week or so. It's probably come up 3 different times as this very possible idea that Nintendo may be implementing. So when you take the possibility of a rumor like that being true, and you take the fact that the 3DS is insanely popular, we all know that it's really helped keep Nintendo afloat and in the positive, making a profit throughout these unfortunate couple of years where the Wii U has not been doing as well as it should have been. It's really interesting to think about Nintendo's handheld market and just the handheld market in general and what that's going to mean for Nintendo going forward. Would it make sense for Nintendo to maybe start to consider not still having a dedicated handheld device in today's market where even though the 3DS has done very, very, very well, it's definitely not done what its predecessor did, the original DS, nor has it even touched what the Game Boy Advance and the entire Game Boy family line has done. And I do think that, when people talk about the truth of that, I think that they're still maybe putting too much weight into the idea that, the 3DS really didn't do as well as the previous one, so it's not really doing that well, and maybe the whole market's dying. The 3DS has sold, over 50 million units, I think, maybe even 60. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's done well enough. The thing has made millions, if not maybe even a couple $1 billion for Nintendo when you can factor in all of the software that sells insanely well, all the Pokemon games, the great RPGs, Nintendo's other first-party stuff like Link Between Worlds and Luigi's Mansion. Nintendo does extremely well with that. And so the big question is, when you consider the fact that, yes, it seems like it's waning sales and it's a waning market when we live in this tablet and mobile device market and cell phone market, but you factor in the fact that still Nintendo has managed to be very successful and there's rumors of Nintendo trying to continue some sort of handheld line, whether it's with the NX as a version of that console or something totally different, should Nintendo continue the handheld market? And I absolutely think so. When we consider it factoring into the NX, it's interesting because I'm starting to feel less and less like what may be happening with the NX is a version of the console that is a handheld that's still considered the NX, and more just potentially a successor to the 3DS. So what would make the most sense for Nintendo to do? Should they make the NX 2 different units, one that's a console and one that's a handheld that work with each other? Or should they make a brand new handheld that is completely separate from the NX idea, but that can maybe interact with the NX? They touched on the idea starting way back with the Game Boy Advance and GameCube days, for any of you old enough to remember that. I know some of my fellow gents on the Juices Loose podcast that I do, they're going to remember that because they're about as old as I am. And I know a lot of you guys are as well, so you might remember when you'd have to have a GameCube, some Game Boy Advances, plural, and some Game Boy to GameCube link cables or connection cables. I can't remember what they're called actually. I actually still have 2 of them, believe it or not. So, that was the first time Nintendo started toying with this idea of a screen and the controller that you are using to play your console. And yes, I know a lot of you are going to very justly bring up the Dreamcast, which started that with the VMUs, and that was super cool. That was such a revolutionary concept. It's one of the many reasons, actually, I'm sad that the Dreamcast did not take off. and that they didn't have a chance to fully implement that idea. But it was also a little bit too ahead of its time. I mean, if anyone who remembers the VMUs, they were a little too rudimentary to do anything really interesting. But if the Dreamcast had just come out about 5 years later, and if Sega could have held on that long and made that thing really successful, who knows where we would be? They would have literally beaten Nintendo to the punch on true applicable touchscreen gaming for consoles that actually make sense. Anyway, back to the main topic. What would be best for Nintendo to do as successor to the 3DS or a hybrid version with the NX? I kind of want them, and I sort of think that they are making just a straight-up successor. I don't think that it's time for them to abandon the handheld market just yet, and I think that, as I was saying, they've been trying to build on this touchscreen gaming thing for consoles. Sega did it with the Dreamcast, but Nintendo really took it to a new level with the Game Boy Advance link cables. It was way too cumbersome and expensive, so it didn't really do a whole lot, and they didn't get to fully deliver on it. But then, of course, we know that the 3DS came out and changed that whole concept, and now that the 3DS can talk to the Wii U, it's a neat little addition to what those two units can do, but it's not a main function. I feel like what they might be doing now, that it's finally time for them to step into a new era, and I think that they're looking at a whole new business model once the NX comes out. I really think it's going to be a new Nintendo from day one of the NX launch. And with that, if in fact it's not like, a package deal, or it's like the handheld's coming out in March and a console's coming out later, but they're both considered the NX, if they're really just making the NX only a home console, and that's what's launching in March, hopefully still March if they don't push that back, I feel like from the day that thing launches, Nintendo's going to be trying to do brand new stuff and be a brand new kind of company while still hopefully maintaining what makes Nintendo great. And I don't think they're going to let go of those kinds of things and qualities, which is good. I feel like it just makes a lot of sense for them to now say, okay, we need to still capture this handheld market. We've got this new thing, and whether or not it's a two-screen, touchscreen gaming kind of thing, who even knows? I mean, I think it's too early to start going into theoretical territory on what a successor to the 3DS might actually be. I'm just trying to think broadly about the concept of a new handheld that has a new level of power, something like the Vita or beyond from Nintendo of all companies, that's going to be able to offer Nintendo's first-party games on something that might be, slightly more powerful than what the PlayStation Vita is capable of. That becomes really exciting, and I think that if they're doing that, there is no doubt in my mind it is going to be able to work with and talk to the NX. And if they make that a main focus and a main feature of both units and both consoles, where the NX home console is its own complete experience and you don't need any sort of handheld's extra device to be able to really experience what the NX can do, and same with their new handheld. But once you put those two together, man, fireworks start going off and your gaming experience is taken to a whole new level. And if they really focus on that and make it something where almost every game that at least Nintendo makes really takes advantage of that concept, and with any luck, if in fact third parties really are coming back to Nintendo like we want to believe every time a new console's coming out from Nintendo, is this the time that they get third parties back? I want to believe, you guys. It certainly may not happen, but I want to believe, and that's what the rumors say. If that happens, they can hopefully get those third parties on board and have them actually start taking advantage of what these two units might be able to do if they talk together. That's a really big deal, and I think that it's going to make them very successful, very, very popular units. I think the NX and this new handheld could be great. But again, I'm just theorizing here. I'm just speculating and spitballing ideas. I think it is an important conversation to have, though, and I think it's important to keep the 3DS itself in our minds. I can't imagine the 3DS has too much longer of a life in it. It's done fantastically. It is an awesome machine. I play it all the time still. Thank God Kirby just came out. Kirby's not as great as I initially thought when I started. It's a little bit too easy, and it's a little bit too much made for kids, which the Kirby games unfortunately have that. They could be so much more brilliant if they just delved into the kind of difficulty and kookiness of like some of the Mario 2D side-scrolling games where they actually start to get really hard. I think that Kirby could use that, or even the Donkey Kong games, because there's that touch of brilliant Nintendo, just ideas and these kooky things happening and these great worlds and really great gameplay mechanics. I mean, the Robobot thing in Kirby is awesome. But I'm getting sidetracked. The point is, the 3DS is a great system, still with some great games coming out, and there's a few more I'm looking forward to. I'm going to finally, months later, be buying Fire Emblem. I've been putting that off for so long, and I have no idea why. I think now that I have a gaming drought for the most part, I think it's time for me to finally dive into Fire Emblem and really get through that stuff, so the 3DS has been great, and it deserves another year or two, but especially after the Nintendo NX comes out, again, assuming we don't have this two system release where March is maybe the handheld version and then the consoles later. If we're getting just an NX home console release in March, that's when we need to really start looking at, okay, what's Nintendo doing with the 3DS? And I mean, hey, maybe they do phase the 3DS out and they completely abandon the handheld market. Maybe they do in favor of the mobile market, since we know that that's what they're pushing for right now. I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't see that. Maybe they create a device that's a handheld and also a mobile device, kind of like what the N-Gage was, only not terrible. that would be my hope. And I actually worked at a GameStop and launched the N-Gage back in the day. That was part of my tenure working for GameStop as a manager. And what an interesting, weird, awkward time that was. That was like right before or in the year before the 3DS and the PSP actually came out. So very unique time. I definitely will say the N-Gage was an interesting concept, but it was also too ahead of its time. We weren't as immersed in the cell phone culture, and it just wasn't a good cell phone at that. But if Nintendo was to try to do something like that now, I feel like they could probably pull it off, believe it or not. So maybe that's their future, is a handheld device that also uses your cell phone service and it does everything together. I feel like that's a very, very good possibility, you guys. I kind of wish I maybe focused the video entirely on that idea now that I think about it. But what are you going to do? Either way, that's what's going on. I want you guys to tell me what you think about what Nintendo may be doing with the 3DS going forward. What does it mean for their approach to the handheld market as a whole? Because I think that their approach and the ideas that they want to implement to the handheld market may be vastly changing very soon, again, once the Nintendo NX comes out, if in fact the Nintendo NX is only a home console, which I'm really starting to feel like that's probably what it is. Even though these rumors keep coming back and they do kind of make sense, I still feel like the Nintendo NX is just a home console. So will this change their handheld market and the 3DS? How much longer is it going to last? And if it's going away, what's going to happen after that? What will be coming next? Tell me what you guys think. What do you think about my ideas? What do you think may just happen with Nintendo and the handheld market and the 3DS going forward? Thanks as always, of course, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule 2 Review, and I'll catch you guys next time on another video.